So welcome everyone today to the TYRC Planning for a Tribal Youth Healing to Wellness Sport. Olay, we are happy that you are here. We're excited about the great conversation ahead. Before we get started, we just want to let you know this project was supported by the grant award number you see here, awarded by the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention Office and Office of Justice Programs, U.S. Department of Justice. The opinions and findings and conclusions or recommendations expressed in this publication, program, exhibition are those of the authors and do not necessarily reflect those of the Department of Justice. At the Tribal Law and Policy Institute, we're dedicated to providing free publication resources, comprehensive training, and technical assistance for Native nations and tribal justice systems in pursuit of our vision to empower Native communities to create and control their own institutions for the benefit of all community members now and for future generations. Our vision here at the TYRC is envisioning a future where Indigenous youth thrive through traditional lifeways, and our purpose is enhancing the opportunities for Indigenous communities to expand their potential and protecting and nurturing their most sacred asset, the youth. I've got the honor and privilege today to introduce you to our facilitators, Pat and Ashley. I'm going to hand it over to them and let them introduce themselves.
Thank you, Andy and Chris. And welcome, everybody. My name is Pat Sikiakwaptiwa, and I am the National Team Lead for Youth Healing to Wellness Court here at TLPI and TYRC. I am also a tribal judge, and I've been working with tribal healing to wellness courts for about 30 years. And I'm also a grant writer. So welcome to our grant writers today. We love to be in on the very beginning of a good idea. I'm going to hand it off to Ashley now to introduce herself.
Thanks, Judge Pat. Welcome, everyone. Some new names in our chat here. So welcome to this space. I also realized I might be wearing the same shirt from my photo. So I'm a training and technical assistance specialist. I'm here to walk this journey with you. And this is beyond just a training and us talking at you. We're here to engage with you, just as I would with a friend. So welcome to this space, and let's get started.
And also just a reminder, I am here for any technical difficulties or anything that you might be having, so just let me know in the chat. And I'll hand it over to Pat to get us started.
Okay, so let's talk about the big picture of what we hope we'll share with you and that you will learn in this hour and a half that we have together. There's 4 big learning objectives in this presentation. And the first one is, what the heck is the purpose of a youth healing to wellness court, and what are the standards? And we're going to talk about both a therapeutic and a cultural court process. And we're going to talk about the key components of tribal healing to wellness courts. The second learning objective is, what are the goals of this particular kind of court model? Which youth do we serve? What do their eligibility criteria look like? Who does this model work with is number 2. Number 3, we want to show you the Youth Healing to Wellness Court planning map. If you are planning on writing for a CTAS Purpose Area 8 grant this year, you'll want to take a good look at the planning map to see the kinds of deliverables that are typical for a Youth Healing to Wellness Court proposal. And we'll also, Ashley will lead us in an overview of Youth Healing to Wellness Court team member roles and responsibilities, and also how that's different from steering committee or advisory committee roles and responsibilities. And then finally, we'll talk about how each of these things is relevant to data, your proposed staffing, the kind of contracts you'd need to execute, your partners, and the deliverables of a youth healing to wellness court. Why do you need data? Because usually when you apply for federal funding, you have to show some amount of data to support what you're asking for. So we'll talk about data also. Okay, Andy, please go ahead and go to the next slide. So let's start with that first question. What the heck is a youth healing to wellness court? go ahead and jump right on to the next slide. And I'm going to ask Ashley to guide us in a polling question.
Of course, and it wouldn't be an online learning event if we didn't do polling. So welcome everyone. Here's our first poll of the day. What do you think is a core purpose of a youth healing and wellness court? A faster way to move you through the court process. A team-based therapeutic approach focused on individual and community healing. A court docket to order treatment. I don't know yet. We'll give it 10, 20 more seconds. And for those who are, stating that they don't know yet, well, this training is for you, and that's a great place to be. All right, Andy, you let me know when we can move forward. Looks like a few others are still answering, so we'll give it actually 30 more seconds. What do you think is the core purpose of a healing and wellness court? A faster way to move you through the court process? A team-based therapeutic approach focused on individual and community healing? A court docket to order treatment? I don't know yet. And it looks like we may have the answers are slowing down. So Andy, whenever you're ready.
I think we're good to go. I believe that is the results we have showing now.
Amazing. Okay, so the correct answer on this is a youth healing and wellness court is a team-based therapeutic approach focused on individual and community healing. I want to review some of the answers here. It's not about moving you through the court system quickly, right? It's the speed of which they need us to work on identifying what they need in their case plans, their wellness plans. It's not just to simply order treatment, though they may receive the treatment within a healing and wellness court. It's not just to order it. Reasons for treatment, right? If we just order treatment, we're not looking at the bigger picture, what may have gotten them there in the first place. Especially, it's the whole child approach. So not just a docket to order treatment. And for those who said, I don't know the goal yet, again, this is a perfect place for you to be in, to learn the purpose of a healing and wellness court, who's involved, and the ultimate goal of this type of docket. And all right, Andy, and I'm just checking the chat box to make sure there's no unanswered questions. And Andy, we could move on to the next slide.
Okay, thank you, Ashley. So we'll go back at some of those same questions here. So I think as a grant writer, you would want to know that the youth healing to wellness courts are governed by the tribal healing to wellness court key components. And there are 10 components. In a moment, I'll ask Andy to upload that document to the chat and you can download it from there and have the whole shebang. But for now, for our purposes, I want to focus on key component 1, which is individual and community healing focus. And if you bear with me for a minute, I'll just read the short summary of it. So under key component 1, a tribal healing to wellness court brings together alcohol and drug treatment, community healing resources, and the tribal justice process by using a team approach to achieve physical and spiritual healing of the individual participant and to promote Native nation building and the well-being of the community. So there's a lot going on in this key component. For our purposes, it's important to note that in a tribal court, this is not simply a tribal judge ordering a youth to treatment or cultural activities like in a juvenile court. That's the old school way of doing things. The new school way is to use a team-based approach. You have a multi-disciplinary team that includes the court, it includes the judge, it includes treatment providers, it includes community activity providers, which may be cultural providers, the school, but the point is that now you've got a team working with the youth, not just a judge ordering a kid to treatment. Also, it's a special therapeutic court docket that uses different kinds of status hearings that are strength-based, trauma-informed. It looks different than what you see on Law and Order, right? The hearings and trial process governed by the rules of court and the rules of evidence. That is not what the status hearings in a youth healing to wellness court look like. They're different. And then most important, youth healing to wellness courts may incorporate culture as well as therapeutic and or cultural therapeutic interventions in the wellness court options and requirements. Okay, let's go ahead and go to the next slide. So we look specifically at key component 1, but there are 10 key components. And I'm not going to read you all 10 because we would all be starting to snooze over here. But what I can do is focus on the most important key components by function for a youth healing to wellness court. And they're represented here by the gray boxes. So let's start at the top and go left. So one of the most important things to know and understand for a youth healing to wellness court is how do we get youth into it? Are they coming from tribal juvenile court? Are they coming from county juvenile court or probation? Are they self-referring? Is it coming from other agencies? So the first box we're looking at here, which is key component 2, is there a reporting and referral and diversion or transfer process? How the heck are you going to come in to your wellness court? If we follow the circle to the left, another key component 3 is screening and assessment. We're going to screen youth who meet the eligibility criteria for a youth healing to wellness court. And we'll say more about that in a minute, but this screening is looking at legal issues, like are they a violent offender? Because if they are, we can't use our federal dollars for them. So they might not be eligible for a wellness court. It also looks at clinical screening here. Do they have a substance use disorder? Should they be referred for further assessment for a mental health issue? Is there trauma? Also, courts will do another kind of screening called risk need screening for criminogenic risk. What the heck is that? It's a screening to see if you have a youth who is already court involved, how likely it is they're going to become more court involved, and are they going to need more services and supervision than other youth? So screening and assessment, there's a lot of things going on there. And the whole point of key component 3 is that you should do it. You should screen and assess. Continue on around the circle to case management, or what we call wellness management in youth healing to wellness court. This is why it's really important to have a case manager or a wellness manager in your budget. This person works with the treatment provider and the youth and their family to develop not only case management goals, but the treatment provider works on treatment goals too. And they monitor and track the progress of youth, and they're like a mentor and a coach in a way too throughout the whole process. So case management is key component 5. Another part of the key components is key component 5 testing. This is the requirement of drug courts, and also this is a requirement in the congressional authorizing legislation for the money that you get under CTAS Purpose Area 8 is to do random drug and alcohol testing. And the details of that are set out in Key Component 5. Continue around the circle. Another set of components talk about phases and treatment plans. And these are the requirements and the services that are offered to youth based on the results of their screening and assessment. And it's individualized. So it's not it's not a template plan that's used for every kid. It's tailored for them by the team. And then they move through these phases over weeks or months. And hopefully they progress and they graduate from the program. Now, there's two other important functions here. It's the weekly team meetings where you're assessing the progress. I shouldn't use the word assessing. The team comes together to see whether the young person is progressing in their phases. And if they are, then they may give them incentives. If they aren't, they may look at what they need and make adjustments to their services. If they still are not progressing at that point, then there may be graduated sanctions. It's a whole different kind of process in a therapeutic court docket. And these team meetings really drive that process. And these are interdisciplinary teams. And Ashley will talk a lot more about this. Another critical function of a wellness court are the status hearings, usually weekly or every other week. And these are where the team come with the youth to meet the judge. And the judge reinforces the progress of the youth by handing out incentives in a kind of coaching, mentoring, strength-based way. The judge is building a relationship with the youth here under Key Components 6 and 7. So really different kind of court process that has these key functions in it. As you can see on the upper right-hand portion of this diagram, if the youth progresses all the way through the phases, they graduate. They're free to go. There's no court record at all. If they don't engage or they're terminated from the program for violations, then they just go back to the other juvenile court process they were in, whether that was tribal juvenile court or county juvenile court, and then they're subject to the sanctions of that system. But as you can see, wellness court docket is itself a diversion from the state and tribal adversarial juvenile court process. This is a way out to get help and to actually have no record. It's an alternative to the adversarial process. Okay, let's go ahead and go to the next slide. All right, so all the blue you see here, I've explained a lot of that in the prior slide. What I want to focus on is the yellow box to the left. So in the phases of a wellness court, you can tribally modify it. So you could either offer or require that youth engage in restorative practices, that they work with elders and mentors, that there may be tribal history classes or projects, tribal education. There might be skills building that are tribal. I think, because I lived in Alaska for 10 years, I think of hunting, fishing, gathering, traditional activities as skills building that might think of it as cultural or tribal skills building. Those can be part of the phases in a wellness court, both the teaching of it and the doing of it. And then, of course, there are tribally or culturally adapted support groups and evidence-based treatments that have been adapted to work with tribes. Those could be part of the treatment, part of the plan. It's everything from counseling, groups, workbooks. You may have something specific to your community, And this is where you do the tribal tailoring in the phases. And this becomes part of their wellness plan that they're incentivized to progress in through the rest of this, this process. Okay, so there's a lot of room to be creative here in designing your wellness court, your proposed wellness court, and your team can keep innovating with that after you get funding, and then come back to us and we'll help you on that part of the process. All right, let's hand it off to Ashley for a polling question.
Another polling, of course. All right, so I would like to know where you might be feeling most prepared to start working on this right now. So when planning or enhancing your youth healing and wellness court, which area do you feel most prepared to work on right now? Put the information we provided to you, kind of that 30,000 foot view of what is a healing and wellness court. Perhaps you might be looking to identify the right people for those various positions, collecting data to tell your story, right? We really, have to get that big picture of what's going on. Defining your various multidisciplinary teams, looking at your selected population and the eligibility criteria, aligning data collection, staffing, so everything for your deliverables and what you're going to do across the grant, right? So to tell your story and in that narrative for the funding opportunities, where you still may not even know where to begin. Dr. Phil, Oprah, Tribal Youth Resource Center, right? We're right here with you. And it's okay if you don't know where to start. I'm actually going to put in the chat a link to our TA request form. So if you are just starting, you don't know where to begin, please reach out to us. And this is multiple choice, so you might have to click on everything, and that's okay. So today we're helping you plan, get the idea of where you might need to start, things you might need to collect, and who you might need to involve. So when planning or enhancing your youth healing and wellness court, which area do you feel most prepared to work on right now? And my hope today is after this training, this overview, that you'll know where to start. And even if that's reaching out to us, it's a good place to be in. And Andy, when you see it slow down or stop, we could go ahead and end the poll. And right now what I'm seeing is it's a variety. Again, no wrong answer, it's just where you are. This will help gauge us with the resources that we might need to provide to you, and we'll try to send you as much as we can to get started.
Actually, I believe we have a pause in the answer, so I'll go ahead and end the poll and share results.
Amazing, thank you. So again, what I'm seeing here is just a variety of responses, and it looks like that everyone clicked on almost everything, right? So that tells me we might need to dive into what is eligibility criteria and who might you need to serve, who you might need to hire and pull in to support you in this work. It's the reminder that you don't do this alone. And also maybe some of the foundational items, like what is a healing and wellness court? What are the key components? Thank you, Andy, for also dropping that in the chat box. And please take note that I have dropped in our TA request form in the chat, and you could also get to us through visiting tribalyouth.org. All right, Andy, let's go to the next slide, please.
Thank you, Ashley, so much. All right, so let me talk to the grant writers. I love my fellow grant writers. Let's talk about what you need to make a youth healing to wellness court. Particularly, this is the CTAS Purpose Area 8 application. And there's kind of categories here that we need to think about in writing a proposal under CTAS Purpose Area 8. There's the area of data. And you might ask, well, what kind of data do I need? The kinds of data we find, if you can get your hands on it, are local street drug trends. What the heck is that? Well, it turns out that there's a difference between illicit drugs and drugs that are legal, and I thoroughly understand that marijuana and THC straddle that definition. Right now, we're seeing nationally in Indian country a lot of issues around THC and particularly vaping. That data is more recent and harder to find. Use whatever data you can. If it's national data, if it is, get the best data you can, even if it's not exactly your tribe's data. If you have tribal data, use that data. Also, we're happy to help. So feel free to email us or contact us, and we can share the data sources we know about with you. The other category of data that is very helpful is juvenile offense data. This is usually coming from your tribal court or your county court, might be coming from law enforcement, but it's valuable to know what kind of offenses are showing up in your tribal court system or your law enforcement data tracking, and to include that in the application. It's also important, on one hand, we're thinking of sort of drugs and crime in our minds when we think about data, but you also need school data. What kind of data can you collect from the schools that serve your community around student conduct? Are they getting suspended? Are they getting conduct related data? Also absenteeism. Are they absent from school? Do your best to collect this diversity of data. And then finally, there were 4 categories. So I'll just go back through them one more time. There was the drug trends, the juvenile offenses, school conduct and absenteeism. And the 4th one is access to treatment. What kind of access would an adolescent have in your community to access substance use disorder treatment and mental health disorder treatment services? It'd be valuable to know, like, are there outpatient services? Are there residential treatment services? Last year, how many youth from your community were able to access it? Oh, if there's wait lists, it would be good to know that, because that's a need area, a gap area. I hear Aaron Thin Elk in the back of my mind saying, this is very problem oriented, Pat. We need a strength-based approach here. It is fine to include that in your applications as well, to talk about your strengths and to talk about your gaps and your needs in order to get funded. Okay. Let's talk about staffing for a minute. As I mentioned, there are some critical job positions to support a wellness court. First off, you definitely need a judge, a youth healing to wellness court judge. In the past, OJJDP had funded programs where there was no court component, and they've changed their mind about that. So you do have to have a court component, and you will need to have a designated youth healing to wellness court judge working with the team. Another key position is the Youth Healing to Wellness Court Coordinator. This is usually the position that tribes put in their budgets for CTAS Purpose Area 8. And then we're recommending that you also include a position for a wellness or case manager. And the case manager is critical to do all that case management function that we looked at under the key components, right? They do the individualizing of the all that important service provision and need that youth have, including the cultural stuff. So case manager or wellness manager, critically important as a staff person. And then we're also realizing that it's very important to have a tribal prosecutor on board to funnel youth away from the adversarial process to the Youth Healing to Wellness Court process. Now, this person can be a staff member, Or you could just have an agreement with a county prosecutor to move cases from their system into your, or both. So you'll have to think about that a little bit. How important is it to you to move your youth out of that county system? Or maybe you just don't have the resources for it yet and you want to focus on youth in your own local system. That will affect the staffing and the contracts and the, not the partners, I would say. Okay, let me just go through the last bits here. Contracts or staffing are usually about treatment providers. And we're looking for providers who do substance use disorder treatment, mental health disorder treatment, and who treat trauma. And here's the key, with adolescents or for adolescents. And I know this is a specialty that we don't always have in our rural areas. But that's what we would shoot for, right? We would hope for that we can get people trained to work with youth. And these may be contracts, they may not be necessarily hires. So, your core team members for your Youth Healing to Wellness Court, Ashley's going to talk about this a little bit more. I'm not even going to go into this because she's going to do a good job of it. The last thing that you will need to think about for your application are your deliverables. And there is a very specific planning map for a Youth Healing to Wellness Court, which we'll show you here in a bit. This is what does this court do? What do the staff do? What does the team do? These are the deliverables in the planning map. All right, let me just check the chat here. Criminal and school data. Okay, so Elizabeth Horseman is just sharing some possible places to look for data, for tribal police data, tribal police departments. Many tribes using the specific monthly qualitative and quantitative data? Well, definitely, if you have some thoughts about this, answer Elizabeth's chat in the chat. I could ask my TAs here with me, are you seeing your grantees being able to access this tribal police data?
This is Chris Questis, former law enforcement. Most law enforcement agencies use UCR, which is Uniform Crime Reporting, and that covers Part 1 offenses, but there are a couple categories with response to uh, substances. So, and BIA and tribal law enforcement use two different types of tracking systems. It depends on which one they choose to use. So that'd be the first question is what type of reporting are they using? What method of reporting are they using uh, with the data that they gather, and whether or not that data that they gather is refined to the point to identify juveniles or adults. There are some tribes that do. There are some tribes that lump everything together. It's just dependent upon which source they're using. When it comes to schools, most schools, tribal and non-tribal, have to report under Drug and Safe Free Schools Act information, which is an annual report where they gather incidents that have occurred on campus. The only issue is that BIA only reports what's called majors and minors, and a lot of their mere possession is considered a minor incident. So you may have to go to that particular facility to see how many minors they reported and what were the minors that were reported at that time. And the other source of information you may be able to gather is whether or not your tribal region is under a federal task force that is basically run by OCNDF, which is the Office of Counter Narcotics Task Forces. They maintain data from all agencies, law enforcement agencies, on what's occurring within their region, and a lot of that information is public access. You just have to submit an inquiry and as to what you're using it for. So.
Thank
I
you,
hope that
Chris.
helps.
I'm seeing a lot of back and forth in the chat of people sharing sources of data, and Elizabeth saying that the data she's talking about is solely within a tribal police department and it's indigenous data. If you have a tribal police department, go talk to them and see what they will help you with. Also, there was a question, would you recommend having a partnership with the tribal police for youth healing to wellness court? That is a giant yes with 3 exclamation points on the end. Yes, please. They are critical for referring youth when they encounter them, whether it's through incidents or whether it's through some kind of community policing. They are a great referral source. And they need to be involved in the processes that are developed for healing to wellness court, particularly if you have a fentanyl problem in your community, because the sooner you can intervene in those cases, the fewer people die. So yes, definitely.
I just wanted to add, Pat, for the at the NAC, they did make that available to tribal police departments, but remember, access to those databases and to enter into those databases, there is usually a fee to be to have access an access point to that through that agency. And if you're already paying for NCIC and you're already paying for some of the other uh, databases like CopLink, uh, they're going to have to decide within their own budget whether they want to uh, have that additional data entry point and whether it's worth it to them. These aren't free databases.
Chris, can you say what the acronym NAC stands for? Oh, did I lose him?
Uh,
Or maybe Elizabeth could put it in the chat. NAC. NAC. We have so many alphabet soups in our work. Okay. All right. So I'm definitely sensing that data is a big topic for us. And that it's also very critical to our grant writing. National Advocacy Center, which is going into the paid databases. Okay. All right. Thank you, Elizabeth. All right, let's go ahead and go to the next slide so we can get our gloss over the content here for your applications. All right, so under the old notice of funding opportunity for CTAS Purpose Area 8, and I should say that all the information we have to work with for this presentation is from the fiscal year 25 NOFO. And that the fiscal year 26 NOFO is not out yet, and I understand it will be different. I have no idea what the fiscal year 26 one looks like, so we're just prepping ahead with the one we know. And we'll have Andy upload the current NOFO for you at the end of this presentation. Okay, so there's 2 categories in the old NOFO. There is establishment of a youth healing to wellness court or enhancement of a youth healing to wellness court. And both of these require you to have some model in your mind of who you're going to serve. What kind of youth are you going to serve? Because you will create a different kind of model of a youth healing to wellness court depending on the youth's needs. So there are 4 what they call tracks, and it affects how you design the phases of your wellness court. These different tracks start with data on your drug use trends. So, for example, if you had a fentanyl problem in your community, you might need medically assisted treatment programs that are parallel to your wellness court. And these fentanyl involved youth are probably high risk, high need youth. You could very well have more track 1 kids in your system. And so you would want to design the phases for track 1 kids if you think that that's what your community needs. So track 1 has more months in it, like it's a 14-month set of phases. There's more supervision of youth who are court involved. There is obviously case management and services, and there's probably substance use disorder treatment, maybe mental health treatment, very likely also mental health treatment. So you'll sort of group your resources fully for track 1 youth. Track 2 youth are what they call low risk, high need. That means that these youth maybe are not court involved, or they're very limitedly court involved, but they have probably high need, a lot of need for substance use disorder treatment and mental health treatment. And so their phases are going to have fewer supervision requirements because that's not their issue. But it's going to have more treatment in it, and it'll be more treatment focused. And you're looking at more school and treatment data in track 2. Let's go down the box. Track 3, these youth have moderate to high risk, but low need. So they may not even have substance use disorder. They may be experimenting with substances, but they wouldn't assess as needing treatment for it. But they may be court involved. They're showing up in the juvenile court for many reasons, so that they're moderate to high risk of recidivism. So these kids need a lot more supervision, but they don't need treatment. And you're probably looking at a lot of court and school data for these youth. Okay, go over to the right to track 4. These are the low risk, low need kids. They are not court involved. They do not have substance use disorder. It is even possible they aren't using substances. These kids do not need to be court involved at all. Even for a youth healing to wellness court, you do not want to put these youth into court, even a youth healing to wellness court. You want to divert them away from court or refer them away, and put them in programming and education that are more prevention based. I think of these as the CTAS Purpose Area 9 kids. I want to be sure and stress this. You cannot use CTAS Purpose Area 8 funding for track 4 kids. This model is not designed for them. And there are certain harms that can come to youth when you mix them with higher risk youth. Also, when you court involve them, it's the beginning of a pipelining them into the justice process and into more serious things like secure detention or later jail. We don't want to start them down that path ever, if we can avoid it. So I guess I would just say, based on all of our work in the last couple of years, we do see tribes trying to use this grant for kids who are not showing up to school. And that alone is more of a track 4 kid. And this is not the process for those kids. I will acknowledge that kids in the other tracks also don't go to school, but they have all these other indicia that would put them in their track. Okay, so the data that you collect for your Youth Healing to Wellness Court and to apply for your Purpose Area 8 informs the design of your wellness court. If you had an operational court, it also informs like applying incentives, adjustments, and sanctions for youth. And then it also affects what you report on in your OJJDP performance measures. I think strategically it's a good idea to propose that you're going to run 2 tracks, at least 2. And the 2 that, and this is just my impression based on our work, the 2 that seem to be the tracks for Indian country are track 1 and track 2. A lot of track 2, high need. low risk, high need. So those are the two that it would be strategic, I think, to model your program on. The caveat being, if you've got good local data and your data tells you something different, then design it for what you need. Okay, let's see if there's any questions here. I'm really unsure that your CTAS NOFO for fiscal year 26 would require you to go into this kind of depth, but I think your grant writers should think about kind of what they're modeling in the big picture here. All right, let's go to the next slide. I'm by no means expecting you to read all the fine print here. We just wanted to point out that when you plan for a wellness court, there are certain critical job positions that you should budget for, and they're over here on the left. The judge, the coordinator, and the case manager. And let me say something about case manager. This job is often collapsed with the coordinator or with a juvenile probation officer or with a court clerk. And I think from our experience, you will experience a lot of burnout of coordinators because they can't do both of these roles at the same time. So if you look over here on the right-hand side, the farthest right-hand column is the case manager role. So they're like screening and assessing youth. They're doing case planning. They're making homeschool and office visits, curfew checks, referring youth and family to services, monitoring, testing, referring, working with educating other staff like probation or any team member staff, really. They're doing like the day-to-day hands-on work with youth and families and their environment. Look at the role of the coordinator in the middle. They've got all of these wellness court administrative duties, and they have to develop a lot of things. Like they have to work with the team to develop the strategic plan, the policy manual, the handbooks, the forms. They may be coordinating meetings and hearings. What else is important in here? They may be assisting to develop protocols like incentives protocols or testing protocols. They're tracking the data. Now they may be doing weekly reporting on youth to the team. I'm not talking about OJJDP reporting here. I'm talking about team reporting within the system of your wellness court. So the coordinator is tracking the progress of each youth across their phases and their phase plan, basically, and then reporting progress weekly to the team, and the team's using that information in working with the judge to do incentives, service adjustments, graduated sanctions. So there's a lot of data tracking here. And I could keep going down the list. So I hope my point is a little bit made here that these two jobs are two jobs. And that you can very much burn out your coordinator if you require them to do both jobs. Okay. Let me check the chat. Okay. Thank you, Erin, for all your weighing in. Do any of the TAs want to weigh in here on the roles?
When I get to the section on roles, responsibilities, I'll be sure to emphasize that please plan for and budget these three roles. They are essential to making your Healing and Wellness Court happen. Of course, you'll have partners and other dedicated community members, but please plan for these positions.
Yeah. Thank you, Ashley. And I'm very shortly going to hand it off. I've got one more slide, Andy, so let's go to my next slide. Contracts and staffing. I just wanted to say, for grant writers, it would be like, this is a no-brainer. We know we have to contract with treatment providers. Let me tell you what I'm hearing out there. So I'm hearing that while many of us maybe have behavioral health or mental health providers, we don't always have treatment providers that do substance use disorders for adolescents. So it'd be interesting and important to go see kind of inventory what is the training area for our treatment providers. Also, I didn't know this, but not all treatment providers are trained in working with people who have trauma. And I don't have expertise on that. Talk to your treatment providers to understand these different categories and whether they have someone who works with youth as opposed to adults. And then if you have it in the budget, what could you do to bolster or fill your gaps for adolescents in these areas? All right, lots of me talking. I'm going to be quiet now, and I'm going to hand it off to Ashley. On the
We
next,
had we had one question in the chat, Judge. It says,
oh,
what is your recommendation about youth healing and wellness coordinator having a caseload?
yeah, that's the issue we're talking about, right? That is a collapsing of the coordinator and case manager position into one. Our experience is you will burn that person out and you'll have to keep rehiring for that position every year or so. It seems to be killing them off. So recommended to split out the caseload to the case manager. I know it's about money and we don't always have enough. Talk to your judge or your other team members or the other people who are in tribal leadership positions to see if you can scoop together some money to have 2 job positions here. And Ashley's about to cover more of this, so I'll let her take it from here.
Well, thanks,
Next.
Pat. And if, of course, along the way you have questions or comments, please use the chat box. I also saw the Q&A being used, so please use this space so that we can answer any of your questions. And we have our team here today, so if I don't know something, I'm going to lean on them for my team to answer. All right, Andy, next slide, please. So which youth are best served by your Youth Healing Wellness Court? Who is it that we need to serve? What's our goal here, right? What are we doing with this program? We'll also talk about your selected population. Oftentimes you'll see it as termed target population, but we like to use the term selected, and eligibility criteria. So these are, in this next segment, we'll be focused on who are the youth you're going to serve? What do you intend to do? Next slide, please. Outcome goals. All right. So outcome goals, these are the things that you are doing that will create lasting positive change, right? These are not your tasks nor your objectives. These are things that, asking what's going on to how can we help? How can we change things for maybe infinity, right? So here are examples of outcome goals. They may differ with this notice of funding opportunity. Also, if you had an RFP in the years prior, your outcome goals might look a little different. So these goals are typically what you see here: reducing substance use, improving this physical, mental, and emotional, spiritual well-being. When applying for the funding, we want to articulate what an outcome goal is so that we could demonstrate that it's impact driven, that there's lasting change. It aligns with the principles of a healing wellness court. And also these things, these goals here, they're measurable, right? Our director often says, be Indigenous smart. What does that mean? They're measurable. We use that SMART framework. So outcomes are the results or changes that will happen because of something that you've done. So really asking yourself, what got better? What impact did it make? And we might have to work backwards. So we think of what's going on in our community. We have our data set. For those who are you already have your grant, right? You might want to go take a look at your data again and see if your outcome goals are still aligning with your data, your current data, especially those who've had the program for a little over 2 years. Are you achieving what you intended? Does it need to change? You might need to do a modification of your grant. For those who might be applying, grab that data, say what needs to change here, and then develop those outcome goals. I do want to talk a little bit about it being too narrow and or too broad. Here are some implications and issues. So if the outcome goals are too broad, it's too vague. You don't know what you're going to measure. You don't really know what you're intending to do, and you're unclear of what your program is asking of you, right? And also, the people we're working with, they don't even know what they'll be doing. So if it's too broad, it's unclear. Conversely, if it's too narrow, we might miss the bigger picture. We might ignore mental health or family instability or education, right? Things that actually needs to change so that we could actually see these other outcome goals. We have to consider our primary and secondary stakeholders. So primary being the youth that we're serving and their families, the impact that it will make on them. But the secondary, your community at large, those who are going to benefit from this program. So again, don't miss the big picture. Don't be too narrow, but also don't be too broad. And again, working backwards, knowing your outcome goals will tell you who you might need to work with, the service providers, and what needs to change. Again, using the SMART model, so it being specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. Achievable, again, if it's too broad, you might never meet that goal, right? So using the SMART format. Also, thinking of behavior and condition changes. Have we improved skills, education, confidence, increased safer environments, skills of the youth and their families, or systemic change, right? I would love to see that as well. So please work with your TA provider in understanding what your outcomes are, if it's stated in your NOFO or your RFP, or if you're just getting started, what these might be. And take a look at other applications from historically, you could find them online and compare them. How would that work in your community? So those are your outcome goals. Be mindful of what you're applying for. And again, your outcome goals show that the program is working. What got better and what impact did it make? All right, next slide, please. Following questions, of course, right? So let's ask, and perfect, Andy, thank you. The Youth Healing and Wellness Court is most effective when it primarily serves whom? Multiple choice. Any youth involved in the court system, youth with assessed substance use disorders and moderate to high risk of reoffending, youth adjudicated or convicted of a violent offense, youth whose needs are addressed through clearly defined tracks within a youth healing and wellness court model. A youth healing and wellness court is most effective when it primarily serves whom? On reflecting on the slides prior, our outcome goals, what are we intending to do, what's going on, what's our data say? From the data, it informs our design in our phases and the people that we need to work with. And which elements of the key components we might really need to emphasize. So now who are we serving in your Youth Healing and Wellness Court? And Andy, you let me know when you see the responses slow down.
It looks like we still have a few more participating, so we'll give it about 20 more seconds.
Thank you, Andy.
Okay, we'll go ahead and end our poll and share the results.
Awesome. Okay, the correct answer was number 2 and 4. So youth with assessed substance use disorders and a moderate to high risk of offending. Though your data might say low to moderate risk of offending and high need, but not any youth involved in the court system. Different youth need different things, right? Different dockets. We also need to be mindful of that youth adjudicated or convicted of a violent offense are not eligible for this funding. So again, it was number 2 and 4, and 4 being youth whose needs are addressed through clearly defined tracks within the Youth Healing and Wellness Court model. So not all youth need the same docket, and not all youth need the same things. And some need no docket at all, right? They might need a diversion or prevention, early intervention program. That's not a docket. We don't want to further harm or widen the net, meaning that we're intentionally pulling them in to increase our numbers, and as a result, they're getting worse. So let's be mindful of that. And this question, well, how does this work with all of the information that we just had? Well, again, working backwards, what's going on in your community? What are your outcome goals? And your outcome goals will help you identify who you're going to serve. So we'll go ahead and stop share with the polling and on to the next slide, please.
Haha, you thought you were rid of me. I still have a few slides in here. So if I haven't said it already, the original Youth Healing to Wellness courts began from the Juvenile Drug Treatment Court model and in the state system. And these courts have a research base under them now, and they're trying to figure out like who are the best youth to be using this model. And that's what's on the right-hand side over here. So these Youth Healing to Wellness courts under the model are designed to work with youth who are assessed for substance use disorder. So they actually are at the disorder phase. And they are 14 years or older. They have a moderate to high risk of reoffending. That's called criminogenic risk. So they're already court involved, and they're likely to be more court involved. That's the profile of the track 1 youth we've been talking about. And then finally, Congress has said we can't use the money they give us for violent offenders. And that's just a requirement that's on top of the research. So when you apply for CTAS Purpose Area 8, you'll definitely designate that in your application that you're not going to be processing violent offenders using this money. And that will be a condition of the award when you accept the money. Also, it's just important to know that if for some reason Department of Justice determines that violent offenders are participating, given the CTAS Purpose Area 8 money, that the funding can be suspended. So you definitely want to pay attention to that award condition of no violent offenders. And we won't go into detail here, but there is a juvenile definition under federal law of violent offender. And I'll just say it out loud so you can hear it. It's 34 USC 10612. And I can put that in the chat here in a minute. So important to not to propose to use this model with violent offenders if you want CTAS Purpose Area 8 funding. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Okay, I wanted to say a little bit about all the other deliverables in a Youth Healing to Wellness court. And again, here I'm kind of talking to the planners and the grant writers who are here with us today. So there are some standard deliverables for both establishing and enhancing a Youth Healing to Wellness court. A lot of the deliverables get updated if you're enhancing them. So I'll look at the middle column here first. So to establish a Youth Healing to Wellness court, you can propose to do a needs assessment of your community to see, maybe you want to know what tracks you need. You will also, you can propose, and you'll be required to do this anyway, a Youth Healing to Wellness court strategic plan. You can also propose to develop policies and procedures, participant handbooks, screening and assessment tools. You'll be identifying known screening and assessment tools, testing protocols, data collection and information sharing protocols, code revision for a juvenile and wellness code or code review, And then, of course, interagency or intergovernmental agreements. Remember, wellness courts are about collaborating, either between the court and treatment and other tribal agencies, or between all of those and the county agencies. So it's about working together. All of this working together requires written documents, whether they're agreements like MOUs or whether it's the policies and procedures manual, and the different protocols. Your team, if they haven't done so, will need to develop these protocols, ideally under the leadership of your judge. But what we've seen in our experience is it's often under the leadership of the coordinator. Lots of deliverables here that are exactly the magic words for CTAS Purpose Area 8 grants here in the middle column. If you already have a wellness court, or you want to revive a defunct wellness court, you may be applying for an enhancement grant. And so you're going to propose, of course, the things in the third column here, ongoing services to youth and their families. Maybe you're going to develop multi-tracks. You'll have to update your strategic plan and your policies and your handbook. You'll have to revisit your screening and assessment tools. You'll update your protocols. You'll review and update your agreements. Maybe you'll flesh out your data collection system more so than you did under your first grant. You might want to do a process evaluation with a university, for example, and actually evaluate whether what you did last time got you any closer to your outcome goals that Ashley just showed us. So these are the kinds of things you would propose inside your, used to be they required a narrative. We'll see if they require that going forward. But this is the list of deliverables for a youth healing to wellness court. Okay, let's see. Erin's busy showing us tools for strength and needs assessments. She's sharing some general tools. They may not get you close enough to the deliverables specifically of a wellness court, but they can get your community thinking broadly about how to support your justice system and your therapeutic and cultural approaches. Okay. And I'm not seeing any questions. Chris, are you seeing any questions?
No, I am not.
Okay. All right. In which case, I'm going to hand it back back to Ashley again.
Thanks, Pat. Okay. Establishing a youth healing and wellness court core team and steering committee. I actually have on my notes the reminder that you can't do any of this without people in your community, without partnerships to enhance your potential for this program. It's all about collaboration, right? Working together. And it reminded me of the little story. I think I've read it to my son. It's the starfish story, right? And all the starfish were washed up on the shore. And a child says, I have to save all the starfish. And one by one, she's trying to toss the starfish back into the ocean. And this person comes up and says, honey, you can't save all the starfish, but I could help you save the starfish. So that person throws the starfish back into the ocean. And another person sees it. And now they've saved all the starfish because other people got involved. And yes, that's maybe a child's story, but it reminds us we can't do this alone. We can't attempt to do everything such as shown in our outcome goals, right? We can't also be the judge, the coordinator, the case manager, probation officer. We need teams to help us make decisions and have really good conflict, meaning that let's talk about bigger issues and what might be getting in the way of moving our youth through a therapeutic, holistic system that maybe a court was once harmful to them. Next slide, please. Okay, we have a little diagram here of the essential teams of a healing wellness court and also the steering committee. So I'm going to kind of go into each. Here in the diagram shows that there's various people. So planning team, these are people at the start at the very beginning of your program. These might be some of the people that you are asking for help when you're writing your grant, right? We need letters of support. We need people who are going to help tell us what we need to do. Their job is to design the program before it even starts or before major changes are made. We need various people on the planning team to tell us what we need and where to get this information from and how it will operate. They will ask the question, how should this program be built? The core team, this is your day-to-day. The core team, they meet regularly. Typically, and most frequently, the core team, they're discussing about the child, their needs, their strengths, what they could offer them. They're tracking progress. They're gathering information to make the judge look really good, who's at the center of this, who's also in a leadership position. They are informing the team of the next steps in the plans, right? Again, holistic. Remember at the very start of this slide deck, we had asked, what's the purpose of a healing and wellness court? And it said to bring various members of the community together to create a holistic and a therapeutic court docket for lasting change. So the core team will ask, what does this youth need right now to move forward? Then we have our steering committee. These are people in high-level positions and oversight. Oftentimes, the judge will be sitting on the steering committee, the core team, and the planning team. The planning team is gathering the information how to move forward. The core team is getting information how to serve that individual. The judge is hearing all of this, and he's also, or she, is working with the steering committee of what do we need to do over time to sustain the program? Who do we need to have involved? The partnerships to increase the MOUs and partnerships with the state, this kind of give and take between other entities. Do we need code reform and tribal resolutions so that we can embed a healing wellness court into our community, which is all part of sustainability? So a simpler way to think of this, planning team is the designs, the program, the core team runs the program, and the steering committee guides and sustains the program, right? The steering committee is steering the ship. Why you need to know this at the beginning of planning or for grant writing, you might need to gather some letters of support. You're going to need to start to do this at the very start of writing this grant. If you've already received your grant and maybe you're a year in, you might thinking, who are my assets and who do I need to still involve? And gosh, I'm feeling a little burnt out. I can't do this alone. Please sit with your TA and we could do an asset mapping and look at your strengths in your community, who else you might need to involve. I have a little diagram in my hand. I unfortunately failed to put it in the presentation today, but I have a flow chart. And this actually came to light from a grantee who said, actually, I really need to separate out these roles, responsibilities. So we did, together we did. Again, the planning team are members who are getting it started. They lay the foundation for collaboration and service integration. They might meet regularly, monthly at the very start, and then maybe bi-monthly or quarterly as time moves on. But if there's some things that need to change, they might meet more frequently. It's based on the need. The steering committee, they're tribal and community leaders, decision makers, and agency leads, some in higher level positions. Again, meeting quarterly or semi-annually, more frequent depending on the need, especially at the start of major changes. Maybe there's new data that we need to evaluate, and they're going to steer us in the right direction. The core team, this is your day-to-day. Please meet with your core team weekly. When you have staffings, you might be meeting weekly to discuss what the youth needs, and you're tracking progress and you're sharing outcomes, and you know we're seeing bigger things happening, and you have to talk about that with your team. And then there's another term other grantees might use. It's the multidisciplinary team, the extension of the core team, but also the reminder that we call these three groups the multidisciplinary teams, your variety of teams. And I have a few grantees who say, oh, my multidisciplinary team, these are other individuals who come on, don't meet as frequently. They're not part of the core team, but they still provide insight. They kind of sit in between the core team and planning team, and they meet as needed, particularly with those partnerships, with the school, education, and what other information they might be able to bring in. So they don't meet as frequently. So planners and writers, who do you need to involve? You might need to solicit help from them to get started. Next slide, please. The core team members and partners, again, remember we had budget for your judge, budget for your wellness manager or juvenile probation officer, also your coordinator. The coordinator does different tasks than that of a case manager, wellness manager, or probation officer. It's, again, too much for one person to do. But you'll also need partnerships and contracts with treatment providers, your prosecutor, defense attorney, and lay advocates, people who have law enforcement who might be reporting to the probation officer who's connecting with the prosecutor, and the prosecutor's presenting a youth to the judge. We're all communicating. So who else might we also need to include in the core team or planning team? Sometimes there are overlaps. When I first read this, I thought, wait, we're missing a few other people. Of course, law enforcement, absolutely, as Judge Pat said, with 3 exclamation marks, law enforcement, please, they need to know the process, right? What is a healing and wellness court? And to let them know in the community, and they could talk to the families and community members, hey, we have something for them. You're not alone in this. Elders and culture bearers, remember that yellow box with the key components. In your phases, you can include cultural activities and tribal-based practices. Our culture bearers are going to inform you of those practices. Ethelene, thank you. Older youth. Yes, I actually have that on my notes here. Peer support specialists, family support specialists, and alumni. Those who are returning and saying, this program works. I'm saved because of this program. I'm living because of the people who showed up for me. Education representatives, we need to understand what's going on within the schools, particularly with chronic absenteeism and how we could support education and what we do. So who else might you want to think about in your core team? And that kind of gives rise to what other funding or the increase of your budget. Consider this. What happens when we don't have these other members? And remember, everybody could provide something very unique. So please consider these other individuals. Okay, next slide, please. And on to you, Judge Pat.
All right. Thank you, Ashley. So I thought we'd just share the planning map with you for a Youth Healing to Wellness Court. These are all the tasks that you might do over the course of your award. All of the boxes to the left of the line are like year 1 activities. So purpose statements, goals and objectives for your wellness court, setting up your steering committee, setting up your core team, determining your selected population of youth that you're going to serve, and the eligibility criteria, deciding on it, divvying up your roles and responsibilities of team members, and then establishing referral diversion processes, like how do they come, what's the process for youth coming in, and then talking about judicial leadership and supervision. It's very likely you'll spend year 1 doing a lot of that. But if you look on the other side of the line, as you go, you're starting to develop all your process, right? Everything from case management to maybe you're culturally tailoring it and you have restorative practices in it. You're identifying all the pro-social activities, all the way over to, hey, do we need to revise our tribal code, juvenile code, wellness code? Do we need to execute some agreements with agencies or other governments? So we're just kind of showing you the array of things you could be doing under your grant. Some of it's year 1, some of it's year 2, some of it's enhancement. And wherever you're at in the process, you can use CTAS money to build out this planning map. Okay, let me do a quick time check because we've been talking at you for a while. I think we're on our last substantive slide. I will ask you to please stick around and fill out the evaluation. It really helps us going forward. Don't go away yet. Andy, can you take me to the next slide? Okay, so these are the things we hope you take away with from our presentation. I'm going to ask Andy to upload the notice of funding opportunity for CTAS Purpose Area 8. Remember, this is last year's NOFO, and we're still waiting for fiscal year 26 to come out. So watch OJJDP coming along soon, hopefully soon. We should be seeing the next solicitation for your proposals coming out. Okay, so some recap here. We just wanted to stress that originally the Youth Healing to Wellness Court model was designed to serve court-involved youth with substance use disorder, but now you can design multiple tracks for youth who have a kind of a different array of needs. And the tracks that you can propose are obviously track 1 is the model track, and then track 2 or 3, but not 4, right? No low risk, low need youth. The second thing is just a reminder that tribal healing to wellness courts follow the tribal key components. And these are for therapeutic court dockets that use a team-based approach that incorporate culture. Very specific, new, unique kind of court docket. And number 3, in order to establish or enhance your wellness court, you will need to consider what kind of data to collect. So you might as well start looking for that data wherever you can find it. Okay, let's go to number 4. It's critical to staff or plan to staff your wellness court with a judge, a coordinator, a case manager. 3 different staff positions here. Number 5, you want to make sure that your employed or contracted treatment providers have approaches that work with adolescents, particularly in the areas of substance use, mental health disorder treatment, and trauma. 6, you want to be sure to anticipate in your planning that you'll have to enter into agreements either between agencies and or between other partners, between governments, right? Maybe county court, county probation, other treatment providers. You're going to have a lot of people to coordinate and you want agreements in place. We call these MOUs most of the time. Number 8, your planning team will need to set out the deliverables that support Youth Healing to Wellness Court implementation and operations. See the planning map and the lists in the PowerPoint set that we will share with you here. All right, hold on, don't leave us. We have a few more slides. Next slide, please, Andy.
Well, everyone, we've made it towards the end. And I just put in the chat, congratulations, you are now part of a movement from an old school compliant adversarial system that has caused harm to a new therapeutic, holistic, and team-based court system that will have an everlasting impact. So to learn more about the funding, data sets, key components, please use the resources shown here. You will also get the PowerPoint and the recording from today sent to you via email since you registered. So please take a look at these. Please reach out to us if you need any resources or any type of support. Again, you could visit us at tribalyouth.org for additional resources.